guidance is for 13 to 15% growth.
We will probably see some amount of correction in the pace of money that has come in.
Major investment is also coming in defense and aerospace.
Hello and welcome. This is day 2 of the Moneycontrol Davos Bulletin. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor. Now, conversations on day 2 became a little intense today here at Davos. We heard at the World Economic Forum from the Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, also from the European Central Bank on what exactly are they seeing as world trends emerging, especially when it comes to the economy. Apart from that, on the sidelines of the summit, I also caught up with several leaders of Indian origin here to bring you a glimpse of what exactly the India story is looking. First up, the headlines.
India at 75. Network 18 Shireen Bhan hosted top panel of industry voice and policymakers. Oil Minister H.S. Puri assures the common man, says excise cut not a one-time step taken by the centre. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal bats for rapid growth in India's EV ecosystem. CII President Sanjeev Bajaj tells the panel reforms will create the next set of opportunities for India. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal underscores the world's willingness to do more business in India, says globally there are huge expectations from the US. At a panel discussion, Minister Goyal emphasized on the need for growth without doling out subsidies. Salil Parekh, the MD and CEO at Infosys, tells us he is seeing rising interest in digital transformation and metaverse applications. Demand is in good shape and clients are still looking for large-scale transformation. The European Central Bank will not rush to withdraw monetary stimulus. President Christine Lagarde says the central bank is gearing up for the first rate hike in July. Strong comments against Russia continue to come in from Davos. NATO Secretary General addresses the gathering at the World Economic Forum, says Russia will see more NATO members at its borders.
All right, let's begin with what the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said at the World Economic Forum today. He was obviously asked the question on the India story at the moment, in the current churn that we are seeing in the economy, inflation hike as well. And he talked about how compared to the rest of the world, India's story still looks pretty positive for him. Also talked about the need for growth without subsidies. Here's a look.
All of you in Indian industry can also support the government so that we don't need to take too many steps. So a little bit proactive approach by Indian companies, by Indian sectors on their own to ensure that we can all work in an orderly fashion, ensure prices are low, will actually save the government from taking any formal steps, but will help all of you in the long run. For example, if infrastructure projects get totally delayed or are slowed down because of very high prices for the inputs that go into infrastructure, ultimately your business will suffer in the long run if stagflation sets in or if infrastructure spending goes down. Your projects will suffer in the long run. So we have a crisis before the world, a short-term issue to be addressed, and I would urge Indian industry also to reflect what they can do to ensure that commodity prices or our people do not suffer the consequences of high inflation. Subsidies in the short run can support you, can give you a kickstart, but in the long run they become very, very routine. The virtue of subsidies is only when it's swift and in the short run, something like the production-linked incentive scheme, where we are giving a kickstart to help you invest, produce, meet your early years concerns, and then you can fly on your own. Our approach is not going to be driven by subsidies or artificial promotion of our trade. It's going to be much more focused on structural reform and ease of doing business.
All right, next up we've got for you an exclusive conversation that my colleague Shireen Bhan had with Minister Hardeep Puri, Mr. Piyush Goyal, also with the CII President, and they discussed excise duty, oil prices. All of that is what we're bringing you as the next roundup.
Well, obviously challenges are there. Challenges will continue to remain. And all of the business world clearly understands that if there were no challenges, everybody would be a billionaire. We in government recognize that if there were no difficulties, we wouldn't be in government. There would be no need for government. So we are very conscious that that's something we have to sort out. No business, no government can remain constant. They have to evolve with changing times. And I think the government has demonstrated its ability and its agility to move with the situation. Wherever the need arises, we are ready and open to look at what support is necessary for businesses to sustain, to continue to grow. Infrastructure has been a focus area of this government because we believe we have to prepare India for the long run. So you'll find most of the changes in the first round largely focused to ensure orderly growth of the infrastructure sector, housing, roads, all the industries which are dependent on infrastructure growing also stand to benefit significantly. The small-scale sector, the export sector stands to gain significantly from the measures announced. And I think the Reserve Bank had also given clear indication that should the government come up proactively with certain measures, then it will help Reserve Bank refrain from too much of a policy action which could hurt India's growth.
Mr. Puri, one of the key challenges in this already complex mix is what we are seeing as far as energy prices are concerned. Crude at $110 a barrel and holding at that, that is one of the big risks that we are faced with. You can't do anything about crude prices. You've tried to do what you can as far as excise duties are concerned. What's the expectation now, not in terms of prices, but the levers you can deploy if we continue to see prices hold at these levels? What next? What more can you do?
We are very much a part of the international community. And for a country which imports 85% of its requirement of crude, and 50% or thereabouts of gas. Clearly, global prices have a major impact. I mean, how do you calculate price at the bunk? You take the global price, you take the cost of insurance and freight, you factor in the exchange rate, which again is not insignificant, and then you look at refining margins, etc., and you work that out. But I think the good news is, and that's something which India can be justifiably proud of and state up front. It's not a one-time measure which we took on a set of measures on the 21st of May. I think the Prime Minister has demonstrated time and time again that the government, and he particularly, personally, is responsive to the needs of the people. There is sensitivity. Now, you could have argued, as some of my friends did argue, that if your month-on-month petrol consumption increases by 15%, then, it's not having an impact on the consumer. But that's not the story. If you're driving an 18 lakh car costing 18 lakhs, which is the most popular selling model, that's why I'm not going to name it, otherwise say I'm commercially promoting it. But the issue is cost of petrol or diesel doesn't make a difference to that person. But it makes a difference to somebody who has a fixed income, etc. So the Prime Minister cut excise on petrol and diesel on 4th May, 5 rupees and 10 rupees on petrol and diesel, respectively. And again, 8 rupees and 6 rupees. So the government is stepping up. Government is doing, and as Piyush ji said, large number of other measures taken. Now, what is going to happen to international prices? I'm sorry if I sound a little stark, but oil prices at $110 a barrel, that's not sustainable.
Sanjeev Bajaj, let me ask you, so far the mood in industry has been that demand is holding up, investments will be made, there is the start in the pickup as far as capex is concerned, and in light of the additional measures announced by the government, some additional relief has been provided. What's the sense that you get? Plans continue to be on track, plans continue to roll out and move forward?
Shireen, as you said, the last couple of quarters we've started seeing growth come back, at least consumer growth very clearly. We're seeing this on the ground. And as you mentioned again, quite a few sectors, not just commodities, but chemicals, look at real estate, housing, logistics. We are seeing investment already down that cycle. As CI, we did a survey with our top few hundred members a couple of months ago, and 50% of them were already in an investment cycle, and an additional 25% were going to make it in the next quarter or two. Now, maybe that gets delayed by another quarter or two because we know externalities have changed to some extent. But the good thing is that, in general, industry is over 70% on capacity, which means they're ready for the next investment cycle. And with a certain amount of certainty, inflation, I think, needs to be tackled. Now, we know that to the common man, in addition to fuel, we've talked about it, the other is food inflation. Hopefully, we are hearing it's going to be a good monsoon, which means food inflation should be behind us. We should see the domestic demand churning, and that should help in the coming quarters.
And while Shireen was hosting that interview inside, outside, I caught up with the CEO of Infosys, Mr. Salil Parekh. And he obviously has now a new term, 5-year term, also talked about the India growth story. Personally, for Infosys, he feels about 13 to 15% of growth guidance will continue. And interestingly, during our conversation, we discovered his interest in metaverse.
Very exciting. I think the way we are looking at this is we've had an extremely successful past several years, essentially working with our clients on their digital agenda. Right. And what we're seeing going ahead is there's more and more interest in digital transformation, there's more interest in the cloud work, there's more interest in data, there's more interest in analytics, and growing interest in cyber. Those are the areas that we are going to focus on. We're also putting in place some things which are very early in the cycle. For example, quantum, metaverse, and these are things that will start to develop in the next 2 or 3 years. But we are already putting in the foundation blocks that we can start to work with clients on.
Right. I really have so much to ask, but metaverse sort of put in a bump there for me. I want to understand more about your outlook towards meta and also blockchain as a tech.
Sure. So there on Meta, what really Meta is about is today virtual reality, augmented reality, and there are many real world applications. So we are working with clients in the manufacturing sector to look at how that can be used on the factory floor to ensure that things are done more efficiently with more safety. So there are real world applications that we are seeing in the enterprise world, in the large company world.
I see. The economic slowdown or soft recession, as many are calling it at the moment. How are you seeing things unfold in US, if you have a timeline in mind, also US being one of the biggest markets?
Yeah, so US is the largest market for us, about 60% of what we are doing. In fact, today I've had meetings with several clients, and what I'm hearing is everyone is listening to what's going on in terms of the news, whether it's with inflation or interest rates or supply chain issues. But today, for example, the demand is still in a good shape for us. We see our clients are still looking at large digital transformation programs. So we don't have, at least for the work we are doing, a timeline of what this is going to impact it. What we are very clear is we will be vigilant to watch what is going on in the environment and make sure that we are flexible and we adapt to it. But if I look at the demand today, we are still in a good demand environment. We still have a very healthy pipeline, and we are looking at working with clients on their digital transformation, which is working well.
Right, you mentioned clients. Should I take away from this conversation that there is a bit of a wait and watch mode at the moment in the current economic climate?
So not right now. So what I mean is clients are still looking to go ahead with their plans of digital transformation. Right. So no one is yet saying that they are changing their thinking on it. My point was more about we as a company are going to be mindful and vigilant of what is going on in the environment and make sure that we are looking at that. But today we are really very much with a good pipeline and working with clients.
Right, so a sort of double-digit growth there. Do you still see that happening at the moment?
No, so our guidance is for 13 to 15% growth, and we very much see that happening. That's where all of our outlook is, and that's what we see the demand as.
All right. Talking about a couple of deals next, I want to understand how's that going in the current climate as well. There's a war sort of looming. There are a lot of other factors. Inflation is a real key one. Like we said, Davos is really happening at this time as the world economic circle is churning in a way. How are these things impacting business?
So there is clearly a lot of change happening in the world around. But what we are seeing with our clients is clients are ready to move and change the way they're looking at digital, because fundamentally what everyone's learned over the last 2 years is the more you connect with your customers through digital means, the more you connect with your employees, the more you connect with your suppliers, your partners, the better your business is doing. And the clients want to make sure that they move with speed to do that connection. And that's the basis of the digital transformation.
I see. Interesting. I also want to understand from you, as you step up and next 5 years are on the horizon, what are the plans really for profitability to increase that? What focus areas, you already mentioned some of them, are going to be key factors, sort of game changers for you?
So there, I think the growth, we want to make sure we continue with what we've seen in the market share gains so far by building capabilities that are more and more relevant to clients. And we talked a little bit earlier about cloud. We have something called Infosys Cobalt, which is really a huge differentiator. It's the largest repository of cloud capability in the market. It has industry templates. It has 30,000 objects that we can use for client work to get speed. We work on public cloud, on private cloud, software as a service. So it's a very deep set of capabilities on cloud that we have built.
In another very interesting conversation that we had here in Davos today on day 2 has been with Mr. Praveer Sinha. He's the CEO of Tata Power. Of course, the energy crisis at the moment, the coal shortage is something that we asked him about. Also, his focus on sustainability, on how Tata Power is also now thinking about cleaner solutions. But what exactly is the growth trajectory there and his big challenges? Listen in. What exactly are the plans that you have in mind to move on and perhaps engage more with clean energy?
So Tata Power has very ambitious plans. From our present 5 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. We will enhance it by 5 times in next 5 years. We have also very ambitious plans on manufacturing so that our cell and modules become locally manufactured and can be used in the country. We also are going very big on rooftop solar, solar pumps and EV charging. So I think this is a decade in which you will find huge amount of action from Tata Power to take forward the agenda of clean energy and secure energy for the country.
Right. The world is clearly going green, going clean, and looking at alternate sources of energy over here as well. But there are several challenges on that matter. India at the moment also sort of, even when it comes to battery, importing a lot of stuff. And the common chatter or the word on the street is, how will India really capture that space in the times to come? What exactly are the challenges that you're facing at the moment?
It's true that the supply chain is today unidirectional. There's only one country which supplies most of the solar panels and cells and the polysilicon. There's one country which supplies most of the lithium and the other rare metals which are required for manufacturing batteries. That paradigm has to shift, and there has to be multiple manufacturing locations. India is one of the big locations that we are looking at. The government program of PLI to incentivize manufacturing, I think, will go a long way. But this is going to take time. This is not going to happen in just next 6 months or 1 year. But I think in next 3 to 5 years, we should become very secure in manufacturing many of these things, which will make us self-sustainable going forward.
Self-sustainable, something that the Prime Minister has also been talking about. Last question, really quick, key takeaways, industry forward from Davos this year.
I think that renewable is a agenda which we should not change. There may be a short-term challenge in terms of energy security, but the long-term agenda of sustainability, the long-term agenda of net zero, the long-term agenda of restricting temperature rise to 2 degrees, I don't think we should dilute it under any circumstances. So it's very important for us to keep our head down and deliver whatever
Even in midst of an economic crisis that seems to be looming?
Yes, absolutely. This is a long-term solution. This is not a knee-jerk reaction, and we should be very, very committed to whatever we have set for ourselves. We should not get diverted by whatever changes are there. I'm sure this will also pass and we will be able to overcome these challenges.
I know I said last question, but it's coming to my mind right now. I really have to understand about inflation and the impact it will have on the industry and how you're seeing it.
Yeah, this will to some extent slow down some investment plans, but I do hope that this will stabilize. We had a very, very good run for last 2 years when the interest rates were very low. It will now pop up a little bit, but I don't think it will be a game changer in terms of stopping the investment.
Do you have a time period in mind?
Well, in next 1 year, we will have some inflationary cycles, but I think we should be able to come
Only 1 year?
Yeah, I think so, because I think India is on a growth path and many of the challenges that are there are getting addressed. So I'm very confident that the way we have structured ourselves and positioned ourselves, we'll see a huge amount of growth. There will be a 0.5%, 50 basis point or 75 basis point increase in interest rate. But then these investments are for 25 years and it can be amortized over a period of time. So I don't think it will really make a huge difference in the cost of energy that we will produce.
All right, moving on. Startup, and more startup. The conversation around that, especially at such a crucial time, is not changing. In fact, where I am right now, right outside the India Lounge, the secretary there, the government had an interaction with some of the top startups in India and the world. And there were some very key, interesting bits that came out. On the sidelines of that, I caught up with the Meesho co-founder, Vidit, and discussed with him the key issue with startups at the moment, which is about layoffs, which is about a freeze of sorts coming in on hiring, also on funding. And also, he suggested there seems to be a rejig and a recalibration in the way startups are really looking at the entire ecosystem over here. However, when we did ask him if the startup party is over for India, he says it's not all loom and gloom, and the next 2 quarters are crucial. All right, here in Davos, things have become a little chilly. The wind is blowing us all away, but in conversation now with Moneycontrol is Vidit from Meesho. Hi, how's it going for you? I hear first time at Davos?
Yeah, first time, and somehow like a lot of people who come here very often, like I'm missing the snow, but I'm sure I'm not. Like it's already too cold for me, very, very windy, but this place is beautiful. The place is beautiful. People are amazing, lots and lots of people that I otherwise would just not meet back in India. So yeah, it's fun.
The word about the weather is unpredictable, something a lot of people are saying about the startup ecosystem as well at the moment. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think it's unpredictable. All of us know, right? Like I think there's a lot of focus on startups right now, but if you see all the markets globally, like public markets, private markets, in every single place in the world is the same story. The expectations of investors have changed, right? If 2020 and 2021 were purely about growth, it's not about growth anymore, right? Like people want growth, but profitably. And like companies who had just designed everything in an organization towards growth now have to change that direction. That comes at a cost. I know a lot of like companies are like going through like painful transitions. A lot of them are my friends, and I think it's painful for everyone, right? Like no one likes to part with their like team members, but sometimes it has to happen because the ecosystem needs to align with the new expectations out there.
Let's talk a little bit about the specifics. You just had a meeting with the secretary here as well, and there was a lot of optimism in the room, but nobody really highlighted the elephant in the room at the moment, which was about a freeze in hiring, about layoffs taking place, about this being, controlling ad spends as well. We've been doing some research at Moneycontrol, and just to give you a number there, the startups at the moment have fired about 5,000 employees this year alone. That pretty much tells you that the startup party is pretty much over.
I won't say it's over, but I would definitely say there's a difficult phase, and it'll be for the next few months. But I also feel the positive thing is that everyone is acting on it. Like sometimes people can just freeze and don't know what to do. People are acting on it. People are taking some of these steps, which are very important. Now, if you look at like what is happening in the room right now in the entire discussion, I think there's a lot of optimism across the world for India from a very long-term perspective. There are very, very few markets that are as big as India and are growing as fast and will grow as fast for the next decade or two.
Yeah.
And as I said, like this whole thing of like markets crashing is happening globally, right?
Yeah.
So people still have money and they will put in different places. Money is going to come to India.
Yeah.
So I think that optimism is not going to go away, and I don't think the party is over. I think there's a difficult patch that all of us have to go through. It's difficult for everyone.
How long do you think this patch is going to last?
I think it will be the next 1 or 2 quarters at best. I think until then, people would have realigned to the new expectations. I also feel some of the markets globally have overcorrected. Like there's too much pessimism right now. Some of those things will also start to become better when there's a lot more clarity around whether, like what is happening in geopolitics, right? Right now, people are taking like, the worst case view of Ukraine, Russia, right? So all of that will
it's not
become
just
more
going
clear.
to be 2 quarters then. I mean, that would be a bit
No,
of an
I feel
optimistic approach.
I think in 2 quarters, I believe the changes would have happened. Like it would have become a new steady state. Like there will be a new normal. People would be hiring at a new state. People would be like taking newer growth goals, not the same as they were taking last year. So I believe like this pain will go away. Like people had taken very large growth goals this year, and they had hired their team for that, and they were investing in marketing for that. Like those goals don't exist, so some of those investments had to kind of go down. I think in the next quarter or two.
Are you realigning your strategy? You talk about how the next 2 quarters you're going to think about it. Are there some initial thoughts? There are lots of startups here. India is a huge factor as well. Are you all like in a huddle thinking about what to do next? Some industry trends can we expect?
So I think we've been realigning our business for the last quarter already, right? Like I think our board helped us quite a lot. They're very, very supportive. But when we got clarity that what is happening in the world, inflation, geopolitics, is not going to go in a month, right? So you can't rely on hope. You have to change your business basis what's happening new.
Also, we caught up with the Zerodha co-founder and we tried to understand from him, is it really that simple at the moment in the startup story? Is it just a temporary blip, or is this going to impact the long-term journey when it comes to startup and India? Listen in to Nikhil Kamath.
I would say inflation in America is a bigger issue for us than inflation in India. The risk-taking appetite of that money will probably go down, logically. If the Americans were able to borrow or the Japanese were able to borrow at 1 or 2% and invest into India, and in a year from now they have to borrow at 4% or 5%, I think their risk-taking equation changes considerably. We've had such a bull run in startup funding in India that, we will probably see some amount of correction in the pace of money that has come in. But I think par for the course long term, India still remains extremely exciting. You talk to anybody here in Davos, everybody's really excited about India. I would go to the extent of saying foreigners are more upbeat about India than Indians are upbeat about India today. So I think it'll be like a short-term issue, but long-term I think we should be okay.
Yeah, I was talking to another unicorn out here and they said that, the minute they hear 2 words, India and tech, they're like, dude, who are you? I want to talk to you. So that's the sort of confidence really that's built up across the globe because of the entire ecosystem in India as well. But this conversation is happening at a very interesting time. We've had layoffs back home in several startups and several unicorns as well. I was talking to Nitin a couple of days ago and he said that, of course, you guys are okay for the next 5, say 6 years. But the worry really is for the young startups at the moment. Do you have an identification or sector-wise, how do you see this impact coming in?
Well, when anything goes up very quickly, it probably comes down at some point as well. I don't think that is the end of the cycle. Maybe it's a correction and hiring picks up again. I don't think it would be right to critique industry hiring maybe 100,000 people and then firing 5,000-6,000 people, because I get that the impact is stark and acute on the ground. But relative to how well the industry has done, I think the correction has been nominal. So I hope things turn around. A lot of these people are in my ecosystem. They live in Bangalore, which is also where I live, and The pain is felt by everybody, but I'm hoping it's a short-term thing and things turn around fast.
But has that changed plans internally? Expansion plans, the way you were looking at the industry earlier?
We are a very cyclical business ourselves. If markets do well, we tend to do well, and if markets don't do well, we do not. Right now, markets are not doing well. So if the cycle were to turn, which I've been attempting to predict what the market will do for about 18 years now, I have never been right. I don't think I would be right in making a prediction today. But I hope it turns at some point and there is a bull run, and we all need to hire more people and we get to grow and everybody does better.
Right. But if this bear run were to stay for some time, as what a lot of predictions are saying, and things continue to happen the way they are happening in US right now, the impact in India is going to stay for at least 12 months or 14, as people are saying here.
Well, traditionally, I think whenever inflation has risen fast, we don't have many tools to kind of counteract it. I think the Reserve Bank in India, the Federal Reserve in America, the only thing they can do is tighten money supply, right? I think interest rates will eventually have to go above inflation before there is some kind of containment.
Right.
So if we were to assume in India inflation is 8% today, probably similar in America, at some point I would not be surprised if interest rates are above that. And that cycle will be slow, and I do not think it will turn in 6 or 12 months, but it will be a multi-year cycle.
All right, let's move forward from India conversations to more global ones here at the World Economic Forum. One of the key highlights of the day and comments really came from the NATO General Secretary at the WEF, where he addressed a gathering there and talked about the importance of free trade. Also, when asked about the war situation, very interesting comment. He says the Ukraine war has taught the world that having economic dependencies on authoritarian regimes have huge vulnerabilities. All right, that's all we could pack on day 2 here from the World Economic Forum in Davos. Day 2 has been dominated by conversations, a lot of Indian participation seen at the forum and also on the sidelines. Lots of leaders now more and more overtly talking about the crisis that the world seems to be at the moment. A soft sort of slowdown and a soft recession is what words like these have been discussed on day 2 as well. Day 3, we'll bring you focus on blockchain. Lots of, in fact, I can just wrap up by showing you this. The blockchain hub right here is one of the busiest. It almost causes a traffic jam during the day, and that's been the story. We will be live from here tomorrow, and we will be telling you the stories that are unfolding from the blockchain hub, one of the busiest this time around at the World Economic Forum. With camera person Saroj, Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor for Money Control.